Well, hello everyone, and welcome to CETI 2020. We're so glad that you could join us this afternoon for today's Business and Industry Workforce Panel with Danielle Sadeghi, Mike Schroeder, Mike Lee, and Thomas Dawkins. We have held the CETI conference, the Continuing Education Training Institute, that is, for a number of years now. And typically we do it at a hotel venue. However, this year, we're coming to you virtually. That said, I'd like to show you our sponsor page. This year's CETI has more than 3,800 registrants. You heard that number right, 3,800 and more, with more than 200 registered for this session alone. Now, it's because of the generous support of the amazing sponsors that you see on your screen right now that we're able to host this conference and, more importantly, be able to provide it to you totally free of charge. Now, we hope you enjoyed the videos that we shared with you right before this session, and we encourage you to visit the websites of our sponsors at your convenience. All right, now I'd like to cover a little bit of housekeeping with you today. This Continuing Education Training Institute session is being recorded. And that said, we'll make a link to this recording along with links to PDFs of the presentations available to all attendees after the conference. Now, you'll notice that when you join the session, you, as an attendee, were muted. It's an automatic thing. So that said, I'm sure that you'll have questions for our panelists today, of course. So we ask that you please use the Q&A box located on the lower navigation bar. And we'll get to your questions at the end of the session. Now, if we run out of time, okay, don't sweat it. We'll make sure that we get any unanswered questions to the panel members. They, in turn, will answer those questions. All right, so when we send out the links to the recording and the other materials, we'll be sure to include the questions and answers as well. And finally, if you like to post things on social media, we definitely encourage you to do so. Just be sure to use our hashtag CETI2020. That's CETI 2020. And if you're on LinkedIn, we encourage you to join the CETI alumni group on that platform. As a matter of fact, we've posted the link to do so in the chat box. If you're interested, click on that link and please be sure to join the group. It doesn't cost anything to join, and you'll gain a lot of insight from it. All right, all that said, I'd now like to introduce you to our panelists for this session, Danielle, Mike, and Thomas. First of all, Danielle Sadeghi. She's the co-owner and vice president of marketing and sales with AMCA, and she's got over 25 years of experience in the allied health industry. She has a vast array of experience in the post-secondary area, acting as school director, marketing agent, director of marketing for a certification agency, and she's presently an advisory board member for 4 allied health schools and LAPCS. Next, we have Mike Schroeder. He's the vice president of business development and global sales strategy for Energy Alliance Technology Corporation, where he's responsible for driving results and delivering solutions across B2B, B2G, and B2C segments in the energy tech arena. Mike's broad range of experience also includes various levels of management at several universities and in the hospitality and restaurant industry. Thirdly, we have Mike Lee. He's the CEO of Act to Optimize, LLC. Mike works to transform learning and performance of operations, maintenance, and industrial processes with accelerated knowledge transfer, enabling rapid workforce training across both the Department of Defense and the commercial industry. Mike has more than 30 years of experience in management positions with Ford, General Motors, and Act Optimize, and he's retired as a Navy captain. We thank you for your service to our country, sir. And last but not least, Thomas Dawkins. He's the president of Workforce Catalyst, where he helps organizations and industries develop successful workforce programs while providing participants a roadmap to long-lasting careers. Like Mike, he also has 30 years of experience in all facets of workforce development, working with the Department of Defense, the Department of Labor, and different industries. He prides himself on being able to provide top-tiered resources to clients that require workforce experts in given fields. So we welcome our four panelists, and we trust that you will enjoy this session this afternoon. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Danielle Siddiqui, who will start us off.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to congratulate CETI on such a fantastic job and tremendous amount of success with this CETI conference, and thank them for the opportunity to share some data with you about marketing in the healthcare job. As everyone can tell, healthcare job market after COVID-19. COVID-19 absolutely has had an everlasting impact on the healthcare industry and on education. We are just really at the start of what we're going to call a decade of enormous growth. A couple of things that are very exciting is that they are finding that the current healthcare workers who are on the front line are truly inspiring new students to enter into the healthcare industry. So that's very exciting for the educators in the schools, knowing that they're moving towards the healthcare profession. Two areas they're obviously going to see a need a growth for is they're seeing a very high demand right now in the geriatric health profession, and they're going to need a dramatic increase in senior assistants. And I think everybody can know obviously what happened with the nursing homes. That's going to drive the market where we need more certified individuals, more trained individuals in those areas. You can move to the next slide. Great. So one thing that you always want to drive to, if you're not familiar with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you want to follow the healthcare job market. Now remember, the stats I'm looking at and going to share with you are from before COVID-19. So healthcare was already expected to grow 14% of job openings between 2018 and 2028. The healthcare already was holding 6 of the top 10 fastest industries. So we do not know exactly how much higher that number is going to explode, but it's going to be fun to watch. So I would keep your eye out if you're offering healthcare jobs. We know that 14% is going to increase, and the BLS is a great place and a great resource to watch it grow. You can go to the next slide. So this is something new that's coming out and has been changing, that skill-based certification jobs will absolutely dominate the job market. So based on research today, they're saying that 36% of high school students after they graduate, when they're making their decision, they are choosing to go short-term programs and skill-based certification. That is extremely exciting. 30% are leading towards associates, and 33% are moving towards 4-year degree. So there's been a big decrease in 4-year degrees. It's very exciting for our industry because we know a lot of career tech schools are offering national certifications leading to the community colleges. So with this movement, we are providing clear career paths for candidates. The world of stackable credential is just going to explode, and this data proves towards that. So it's going to be a good ride for all of us. Next slide.
Okay, very good. Danielle, appreciate you sharing that with us. We've got some questions for you. First question, has the value of certification changed in the past 6 months? And what benefits does it bring to the certificate holder, consumer, and employer?
It's a great question. And I've been involved in national certification in healthcare for actually well over 26 years. And the focus has always been validate skill set, which is fantastic because they did not have an associate degree or a bachelor to support their level of knowledge that they've achieved. Well, in the past 6 to really 18 months, I'm going to open that up a little bit. The certification, the value of a certification is really being drawn towards certified individuals in the workforce, reduce risk and enhance consumer protection and public safety. And I know when I first got involved in education and certification, it was all about the public safety. So it's nice to see that they've added a lot of value than just a third party validating a skill set. So there are three areas. We used to only look at the value of the certificate holder. Now we really want to dive in and look at the consumer and the employer. So we can go to the next slide and we can talk about the value to the certificate holder. Absolutely, hands down, we always knew it validated a skill set. And I have surveyed hundreds of human resource directors, and it absolutely improves their opportunity for employability. But from that, what has grown over the past 6 months is that people who are certified actually have increased recognition by their peers. They're earning more respect. They're earning trust. There's autonomy in the workforce, in the workplace. So there's more than just validating skills. I love those words about if I'm certified, I feel more confident on the job. I've earned trust of peers. Those are really great key terms that we need to make sure the certificate, the person who's going to earn their certification is going to know they're going to have these added values. On the next slide, we could talk about the added values to the consumer. No one ever really, I don't know why, but we don't ever talk about us as consumers all have to have the care from either having your blood drawn or having an EKG, or we're always going to need that. And certification to the consumer, well, absolutely, you need to know that if that person's certified, they were validated by an independent third party from an assessment, so they have the skills to perform the task. So consumers really need to realize the benefit is knowing that that person, and whether it be healthcare, IT, any industry, if someone doesn't have a degree and they're certified, you know they're bringing a level of commitment to public safety, commitment to consumer protections. They want to be held accountable to ethics, code of conduct. If I'm certified and something does go wrong, I want to be held accountable for a disciplinary. The consumer really needs to have a little bit more education that in order to hold certification, you do need to maintain recertifying, knowing that that candidate is constantly, as we call, lifelong learners. They're constantly going out there and trying to keep their skills up to date and stay on top of laws and ethical changes. So that's exciting. Of course, for the employer, on the next slide, we can discuss the major benefits to the employer. One, the employer is using certification to absolutely qualify an individual. And as I mentioned before, 88% of human resource directors that we had surveyed said that if certification's on the resume, they're going to get the interview. So it's going to help the employer qualify them right off the bat. Hey, they've got this skill set. I could help them with possible career advancement. So the employer has a tremendous benefit. It's important for the employer to know that with the recertification, same thing, the employer wants to know that their new employee is actually staying on top of industry standards. So it's important that they know certifications come with the requirements. You're not just certified for life. They usually have a time period, and you need to be a lifelong learner. The employer, it helps them realize this is exciting that the person who's certified is committed to public safety and consumer protection. Those are key words that make people feel more comfortable and making this person certified more valuable. This is new to the market, absolutely, when we're talking about 6-month change. The evidence is coming down to show to an employer that if I hire somebody who is certified, they are reducing the risk of errors, accidents, and legal liability. And that is a major benefit to an employer. If I know that I'm hiring someone certified, that they're going to reduce errors on the job, that is exciting news. This is completely new in the past 6 to 18 months, that the employers see certification actually as a reduction in turnover and increased job satisfaction. So we all kind of know it ranges when someone decides to leave a job and go somewhere else. It could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get someone new, retrain them, bring them up to speed. So employers are excited and looking to hire certified individuals because it's reducing their turnover. So I think that's really exciting news that's come out of the surveys we've been conducting. And absolutely, once again, to the employer, it will justify if that person needs to earn more money or get raises. So those are the benefits for the employer, consumer, and the holder.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle. Glad that you mentioned that because it leads us to another follow-up question here. Is there any data to support this value of certification?
Yes, actually, I'm glad you asked because I strongly believe in data, and I think a lot of people on our call do, as being coming in from the marketing industry. I was fortunate enough to sit on the External Stakeholders Committee for the Institute of Credentialing Excellence, which ICE really accredits probably about 600 different certification companies. So they're extremely valuable to the industry and making sure we maintain a level of quality and process and procedure. We put together a survey of about 16,000 different individuals from different industries, not just healthcare. IT was a vast array of people. We had 9,400 people respond to the survey. So the data, now we can go to the next slide. This is really strong information for people to realize that if they're certified, this is how people feel. What is the true value of certification? So people who were certified, 85% of that 9,000 people said it was easier to get hired. We kind of knew that, but it's nice to know, wow, that's a really high number. 95% felt it was a sense of achievement. And we have to remember in a lot of our short-term programs, a lot of these candidates taking that course and getting a national certification is their real first sense of completion, and that diploma and that certificate brings a lot of confidence. So that's a huge number. 94% said it enhanced their professional credibility, which supports all the other information I had just reviewed. 92% said it provided evidence of commitment to the profession. Of course, 91% said it added value to the profession. Going back to the belief in ethics and requirements and code of conduct, 88% did feel it supported that. On the next slide, we can go over a couple of more really good numbers. That 87% believed it is evidence of a level of competency. It showed it, and that's what the certification is supposed to do. 42% stated that their certification was required. And that's an interesting number only because, as you know, that most jobs do not ever put the word certification required. Not in healthcare, they don't put it in there, even though that's what they're looking for. But now that number is creeping up more and more as the industry standards are changing, that more and more healthcare jobs are going to require. So you'll see that 42% climb even higher. What a lot of employers are doing is 66% of our candidates said they got the job, but were required to complete certification within a 3 or 6 month period. So if they didn't have it, they needed to obtain it. So those are interesting numbers to watch. 79% felt that certification helped them prepare for their profession. And 72% felt that the certification helped them perform more effectively on the job. And I think that's a great statistic, that if I'm certified, you actually are being more effective. And so that's a lot of good data. If anybody feels the need, I have a full 72-page report we worked on and would always be glad to share it if you love to see numbers about the value of certification.
Very good. Danielle, appreciate you answering that question. Now, with all that data in mind and an ever-changing educational environment, the next question here, current changes due to COVID-19, that's on everybody's mind, right? How are schools and students coping with completing their classes and education requirements? And once they do complete, how are students in educational facilities dealing with offering final exams and certification exams to get these certifications you've been talking about so that students can enter the job market?
Yeah, no, that's great. And really the key buzzword today, I'm sure if no one might not have known it, but now it's all about live remote proctoring. For distance learning, it's live remote proctoring has always been there. ANCA had actually fortunately dove into live remote proctoring about 3 years ago when working with our schools that only do online courses. every national certification, if you're NCCA accredited, has to be proctored. So you can't just say, go home and take your test. It has to be, you have to provide an environment, the same equal environment, whether it be at home, in a classroom, or through a camera. So live remote proctoring really has turned on high speed right now. So a lot of schools, what they've done is they've gone completely electronic, Google, different formats, teaching their classes online. And then when they're trying to schedule their national certification exam, they have to pick the option of live remote proctoring. It's basically a person, we choose Proctor U. I'm not going to give they're doing a fantastic job. They basically have a 1-to-4 ratio. They have over 3,500 proctors that are set up across the country that literally are trained, and they take over your computer, you take the test and submit. It's very interesting. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. The problem today, like everyone's having, is the entire world's on the internet, so bandwidth is crashing. But we are definitely helping the students one by one get through the process, because the job market, these people want, the industry wants them certified and out there working. So fortunately, due to live remote proctoring already being in place and just needing to go through some approval processes, we were able to at least let them finish. And this month is huge. Hundreds and hundreds of students are graduating high school with their certification.
That's tremendous. It wouldn't be possible without live remote proctoring.
No, it would not.
I guess we want to make sure nobody cheats. It got to be proctored. Yeah. Well, with that in mind, and talking about what's going on with all this stuff going to an online virtual type environment, brings us to the last question. What is blockchain, and how does it tie into digital badges?
No, thanks. It's a good question. And I think the same thing, COVID-19 is really going to even solidify and push the digital badges even more. Anyone who knows me knows that I've been a big advocate for digital badging, which is basically a representation of your certification in an image format. And when you click on it, it's a true validation. They'll know the issue expiration date, and that's going to be expanding. So before I talk about blockchain, digital badging, where some of the certifications, especially AMCA, are moving, especially after COVID-19, is they're coming up with digital wallets. Just like you have your Apple Pay or your Google Pay, you pay from your phone, which is very, the younger people have, of course, have adapted to that. I still have a little pushback technically wise, but but everyone's really moving towards a digital wallet. So all of your cards, your insurance cards, everything's going to be in your digital wallet. And that's where the blockchain falls in. That a digital badge is going to go the next steps. So when you want to share your credentials, we are actually all going to be creating little barcodes. As if you were in the food store, you see little barcodes. Well, every bar is going to stand for a different level of your achievement. So it's a way to create a permanent record, and it can't be tampered with, which is excellent, and then shared throughout if you're looking for a job or a community. So it's just a way of taking all of our credentials and moving them into our digital wallet. I am absolutely not an expert on blockchain right now, but I do highly recommend people, you know what, after COVID-19, you are not going to be able to get a regular certification card to put in your wallet. Everything is going to be going a certain way. So you kind of want to keep your ears out to just know if you're involved in certification, where the actual credentials and how they're going to be shared. So it's just a new key term to kind of keep your eye out on.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that, Danielle. Thank you so much also, Danielle, for your presentation this afternoon and for answering these questions. I'll be monitoring the Q&A as we go through. And folks, if you have any other questions for Danielle or for any of our other panelists, presenters this afternoon, please be sure to enter them into the Q&A box on the lower navigation. All right, with that said, I'd like to turn it over to our second presenter for the day, Mike Schroeder. Mike, take it away, sir.
Thanks, Joseph. First, I want to thank CETI for this opportunity and especially for pushing out this conference over the last several days for free to so many across the nation and world. And I did notice on the participant list that there's some of the alumni names I recognized from my CETI LinkedIn alumni connection. And I hope to see many of you others on there too to join the CETI alumni connection too after this presentation. But I'm here to talk today a little bit about the energy and technology field. The energy fields have been booming and will continue to boom. One of the big shifts that you're starting to see, of course, that was already in transition, but COVID is driving this, are the safety and sanitizing components. You're seeing a lot of small business opportunities everywhere around the country. You're finding the craft brew or distilling entities have shifted into making sanitizing products for their local communities. You're finding different products are necessary for the reopening that is occurring across many states and will continue across all states. So the safety and sanitizing components of the energy field is one to keep an eye on. Manufacturing is another area, and manufacturing is a very, very broad topic that I'll talk about over the next 3 slides. Manufacturing can combine a variety of different certifications that employees need, from AutoCAD to bookkeeping, to the accounting, to the HR side. Manufacturing is very, very broad and goes across many certifications that are available. In addition, the supply chain piece. Supply chain and logistics we've all heard about. Some of us live and breathe that every day. I know I do. The aspect of the supply chain piece, the Six Sigma Green Belt is an excellent example of a certification that many of us look for as we're in the supply chain component piece. And project management. Whether you do the entire project management certification or do an introduction component piece, I can tell you that the tools of project management, from the budget aspects to the ordering to the management and tracking, will help you tremendously no matter what your occupation is. And so the energy fields will continue to emerge as you've seen throughout COVID, but you will see actually for many years to come. Switching to the technology fields, these have been in demand for the last couple of decades, and the reading that I do, as well as the data that I've seen, this is not going to change. Matter of fact, you're going to see a boom. CETI is a perfect example, but everywhere we look, the e-learning platforms, the verticals that are existing now in education, health, business, across the board, even the faith and nonprofit side, the e-learning components are just going to continue to quadruple, multiply by the thousands. So if you're not in the e-learning sector, or if you're looking for that, you'll start to see a lot of jobs posted for e-learning different certifications. People that can come in with multimedia platforms, people that can help design. I always tell people that the 3 certification classes that are available out there to just get your basics of 8+, Net Plus, Security Plus, really can help you just get an entree level into the industry. But at the same time, you can start to really expand your aspects. If you're on the marketing side, that's another area with the social and digital media side. Every entity is looking for assistance with the marketing and digital side. And there are tons of certifications around this sector that would help you in the technology field. And of course, the infrastructure piece, the security side. We know we have to protect our data. Every day we see, not every day, but many times we see leaks, especially for some Fortune 100 companies where their data has been compromised. CCNA, CompTIA, Cisco certifications are readily available and needed by the IT sector. Thanks, Joe, for jumping on to the next slide. So the small business and startups, I want to touch on this a little bit. If you're not currently working, whether you're in the educational sector or you're a small business owner or you're a chamber entity, if you're not working with each other, I highly recommend you start connecting not only at your local, but your regional level and your state level. And this is a great opportunity. If you're an individual looking for employment beyond the workforce office, I highly encourage you to connect with your chamber. If you're an educator and you're not working with your chamber, I highly suggest that you do that. When you look at chambers composition, most of them across the country make up about 80% of those are small businesses or startups. So they're looking for people to wear multiple hats. There's an opportunity for both training from the educational sector, but there's an opportunity for individuals from an employment aspect as well. You also have to be willing to think out of the box. I I've seen some very innovative things happening from Savannah Tech, for example, as well as some 2- and 4-year institutions across the country. You have to look at your certifications not just as the certification. If you're able to look at your local market and really package the certifications to meet your industry needs in those conversations with the businesses, you will find that, for example, a small business may need assistance with Microsoft Project, but they also need somebody that understands QuickBooks or accounting fundamentals. They may need an HR certification as well. So those employees will come in wearing several hats all at once. And so you need to start thinking about grouping your conversations together in a sense that makes sense for your region. They won't make sense, for example, Southern California to Virginia, to Maryland, to New Jersey, to Illinois. They're all going to be different. So you really have to, again, I'll circle back to make sure you're in touch with your chamber, make sure you're in touch with small business organizations in your area, as well as a large and medium size also. Make those connections between education, individual, and the business sector. And the last one I'll give to is on this slide, is you have to be willing to relocate. For example, is in this COVID time, every day, no matter if you're on your smartphone, if you're turning on the news, which I can tell you, don't turn on the news, with the exception of maybe an hour a day. Don't consume your day with that, but keep in touch with the news. And every day you're going to see the number of unemployment jobs sparking in various regions, especially in the hospitality and restaurant sectors and our service industries. You may have to look at the opportunities to relocate for a short period of time, as well as to set your courses up if you're an educational provider in a particular area to meet demands that may be 100 or 150 or 200 miles away from you. I had a great example. I had a friend here in Southern California who works in the sleep apnea business. He works with the machines and the technology part. He realized that in Virginia, in Richmond, where he had some family, that there was a sector that was in high need of somebody that kind of understood the respiratory machines, and those machines that he worked on are very similar. He called them, he had a conversation, he's relocated to Virginia for about 6 months then, went there in February, and has been since working with those entities to help them. He expanded his horizon, but at the same time, he'll move back to Southern California, but he had to look out of that. Do you have to go that far from coast to coast? I'm absolutely not saying that that's necessary, but I was born and raised in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and DC. And so the example I'll give is if you're living in Emporia, Virginia, or one of the technical schools in the Emporia, Virginia area, and every spot in the country has an Emporia, Virginia, you're close enough to get to Raleigh, North Carolina, or to get to Richmond, Virginia, which is a little bit closer. You may need to match up your skills to be able to match up with the industries in those sectors for either a short period of time or as an educator to be able to help the markets in the unemployment sector, as well as continue to take a look at legislation, the 4,000 business tax credit piece, and if that passes the federal legislation, continue to keep an eye on the MyCA and the spousal support, the active duty, as well as the veteran transition programs out there. Anywhere from 1,500 to 4,000, 5,000 available to individuals. Make sure that you're connected with those programs or talk with somebody that has the knowledge on those. Joe, next slide. Just like organizations have to pivot, students also need to be pivot as well. I'll give you an example of our organization. We had to make a major pivot. Our business in EATC is around the fuel catalyst side. So we mainly work with fuel products and assisting fleet vehicles, as well as really improving the NOx and the carbon dioxide and emission aspects of the industry. When COVID hit, we realized that we could have a stronger impact. We already had Homeland Security and EPA and FDA regulations and permits. So we worked with our federal and state local governments to shift into the sanitizing and the safety fields to really help entities, one, in the early stages of COVID survive, but then we've been helping a lot of entities reopen, and we'll continue to do that as workforces return to the work. So just like organizations have to pivot, what I want to leave you with on this slide is students must also think about how they're going to pivot. So many programs out there. Danielle touched on some of those. You'll hear others from Mike coming up, as well as Thomas. you have to start to think about the level that you're at, whether you're an adult, returning career changer, whether you're a high school graduate, or even somebody in high school right now, you're in a 2-year program or you're in a 4-year program. I highly encourage you to enhance whatever you're doing with certifications. Those certifications, those digital badges, they will continue to be looked at, and/or industries will seek out employees with those certifications. I've already noticed many job applications across the board are asking project management certification, healthcare certifications, IT certifications, CAD certifications are highly sought after for employees that are coming to work. And your resume will go to the top of the pile if you have some of these certifications. The other way these certifications do too is they give you a leg up on other employees that are applying for those same positions. If I'm a computer science bachelor's or 2-year degree seeking degree graduate and a recent graduate, coming out, I'm going to be applying for positions with hundreds, if not thousands, of other computer science and IT degrees. Now, if I had a CCNA, a CISSP, a Net Plus certification, a Cisco certification, whatever it might be to that degree, you cannot tell me that I'm not going to be looked at in the top part of those resumes instead of the bottom part. I also will say that it's not a bad time, no matter what time and era we're in, to ride that wave. Danielle highlighted many of the healthcare occupations as well as needs and certifications in the healthcare side. So I won't touch on that one, but believe me not, those will continue to be very strong during the COVID era. The e-learning side I touched on, the IT, the digital, and then especially in the safety and consumer goods side, those waves are going to be strong for the next year to 5 years. So keep an eye out on those and ride the wave. And if you're looking to be a career changer or you're looking to enhance your existing degrees, those are the ones to keep attuned to. And manufacturing. Too often, manufacturing gets that kind of that bad vibe. I came from many years ago, the vocational sector, and voc ed was always termed as a bad, or kind of a lesser aspect. Of course, not today. Many positions without that voc ed education, those are the ones that are surviving right now. But manufacturing, it's not just that blue collar job. Manufacturing is high tech. Manufacturing has a supply chain component. Manufacturing needs leanness. So the Six Sigma and the lean manufacturing certifications, the project management certifications are highly essential for that industry. So I highly encourage many to look at the manufacturing fields as you're expanding out, because they need accounting, bookkeepers, they need marketing, they need digital, they need advertising. Those are sectors that whether you're an educator, whether you're a small business, you can connect to them. And especially if you're an individual looking for employment, continue to look at those sectors as well. Thank you, Joseph. Next slide.
Very good, Mike. Thank you so much. I appreciate your insight and your perspective on this topic. And you talked about pivoting and how much COVID-19 is on everybody's mind and so forth. Here's the first of the questions for you. How has your company pivoted during the COVID-19 crisis? And how can students themselves pivot also with companies for skills?
So that's a great question. I touched a little bit on our company. We by far are not giving up and will continue to be in the fuel sector, in the fuel catalyst and the emission side, because that's our motto, and the green and the environment component. But at the same time, we had the ability, we had the supply chain, we had the vendors. And when I talk about that, we were able to pivot into the sanitizing side. But when you think of sanitizing, it's not just the multi-purpose and the chemical side of it and producing the liquid product. It's also making sure that you had those vendor connections, from everything to backpack sprayers, to wipes, to pumps, to the bottles, to the gallon jugs, to the totes. So when you think about those sectors, it's amazing how sometimes people get thinking of lines, or I always say I'm going to date myself here, Joe, but the I Love Lucy episode where the chocolates and,
right.
and Lucy is trying to do that. It's not just the line work, it's the other aspects of manufacturing in the different sectors, especially in the energy tech field from where I am now. But so just as we had to pivot, what I want to suggest for students is how you can pivot into a company or with a company that you're currently working with. For example, if I'm a particular employee of a company and my responsibility right now is human resource, that does not mean that I shouldn't be looking at the potential of going to my employer and saying, I'd like to get a little bit more attuned to the e-learning aspect and how to deliver my human resource background into an e-learning environment. And so you're going to need some IT skills, you're going to need some social media or digital media skills that may not have. So when I talk about an existing employee, it's looking how you can, one, help your organization or help your company or help your business to be able to not only sustain, but to move forward and to evolve. If you're a student that's looking for a job, that's the same conversation that you can start with as you're going into a company. If you're a particular background and discipline, start to think about what you can add to that. And when you apply for jobs, bring those topics up. Again, if I'm a human resource entity, or let's do the opposite. If I'm an IT certification person and working in the IT sector, that's an excellent opportunity that perhaps I have a bookkeeping and a QuickBooks and I can help tie and link the accounting aspects or a customer relation management system together for that company that I'm getting ready to work for. So I leverage my IT background, some soft skills. So continue to look at that and pivot that, whether you're an existing or job seeker.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess everybody needs to kind of shift their paradigm in this regard. You know, we're living in a different world. So if I am one of these applicants, let's just say, here's another question that's related to that. Where can I find out information on small businesses or startup companies?
Okay, well, now that the libraries have opened up, anybody that would like to get in touch with me after this, I can send you a couple links, but there's some databases that through both the census, but the Department of Labor put out that you can literally search by zip code, by state, by sectors, to be able to find some of those small business and startup companies that exist in your area. The other one I highly suggest is you can join various groups, whether it's on LinkedIn, if that's your social media component piece that you look at. But or maybe you start that particular group within LinkedIn. But there's a lot of opportunities within LinkedIn to connect with small businesses and startups, especially within your region, but also globally. And then the one I mentioned earlier is just actually either walk into your chamber if they're now open, or many of these chambers have this information online, is take a look at the membership of your local chamber office or your state chamber office and pull that information, and you can pull up the small businesses and startup company list directly off of them. And again, I highly encourage just to visit your chamber office and just have a conversation with one of the employees in that chamber to get additional information about the local businesses in your region.
Very good. Yeah, knowledge is power, folks.
Yep.
So avail yourselves of the available resources. Okay, thank you, Mike. Earlier in your presentation, you talked about the manufacturing sector. I thought that manufacturing jobs were mainly, blue collar, production line type jobs. What are some manufacturing jobs or skills that you are seeing in the energy and tech field today?
So, I touched on that and I gave my I Love Lucy dating myself.
Yeah.
There's probably a better Seinfeld, but I'm still dating myself if I give one of those examples. But so some of the skills that I'm seeing both with companies that we work with or within our own company, these are high-tech positions. One of the things that we pride ourselves at EATC is we tend to look at the veteran population and are hiring veterans coming out of the military that are transitioning. The skill sets that they bring are amazing. The connectivity, the technical, the valve aspects of these machines, tanks, even how to connect them and the flow. It's not just the chemistry and the information behind it, it's the technical aspects of how they run. And of course, so much of this is electronic. So whether it's CAD certifications, whether it's certain specific technical certifications, which many of, I'm going to throw them out there again, Savannah Tech, but they're the Savannah Techs that are within your region. Make sure that you check those schools out because they are attuned to the manufacturing and the technical jobs within your region. And no, I'm not getting paid by Savannah Tech, but I know them well and know
Right.
many around there as well too. In Virginia, the Northern Virginia Community College system has many of those. But so take a look at the different tech fields that are there. The other piece I will say too within the manufacturing is we constantly need personnel that understand supply chain and understand the ordering, that understand full load and working with the trucking industries or the rail industries. So the data sheets, the soft skills that go along with that, the business skills, those certifications and those entities, whether it's just learning accounting fundamentals, I wrote down a couple of these others, even Photoshop, being able to put information and stuff out there for flyers on the sales and development side, to the bookkeeping, to the HR professional, because like I was saying, many of these businesses need to wear those hats, and some of these entities outsource. So the other opportunity with these manufacturing entities is if they're outsourcing those jobs, check and see if they're working with CFO exec or CFO now in your area, because you could start an accounting position with a particular company that they're outsourcing to. So that's what I'll leave you with, but I could definitely answer more questions or give more information to that. But Joe, thanks for the question.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah, so remember that about manufacturing. Even if you don't know how to run a printing press machine or stand in front of a whole bunch of chocolates as they're coming by you, again, borrowing from the Lila Lucy, right? Hey, everybody needs to learn how to be more efficient. Everybody needs these soft skills as well. So thank you for enlightening us on these things, Mike Schroeder.
Thanks,
All
sir.
right, now, yes, sir. And now we bring you our third presenter, panelist, Mike Lee. Mike Schroeder talked about making things available for veterans. We thank you, Mike Lee, for your service to our country, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation this afternoon. So, Mike Lee, take it away, sir.
Well, Joe, thanks so much. And again, it's great to be here with you at CETI today. I'm going to kind of share some perspective on what's happening in industry and with the Department of Defense as far as accelerating learning, making it easier for folks to get to it and easier to reference when you're actually on the job. And so when we talk about accelerating it, the performance aspect of this with folks out there in industry is critical. So when we talk about understanding new processes, and we don't mean just hands-on working with equipment, but it could be with software that you're working with, whatever you're using out there on the job, how do we make it easy to understand? So if there's a deficiency in human performance that's caused by lack of understanding, how do we help folks understand very rapidly? And it's through accelerated knowledge transfer. So think of it as virtual on-the-job training, and it's just in time when you need to reference that. So focus with this type of approach is, first of all, on comprehension. Do you understand it? Second would be retention. Is there stickiness there where you can remember it while you're performing certain tasks? And lastly is drive to action. Do you have the confidence to do something the first time? Some of what we do can be very intense. Think about out and deployed situations where we enable folks to perform surgery in the field. So there's a lot of different uses for this, and that's why I wanted to kind of touch on some of them today. When we talk about videos, obviously visual is the best way to go these days, but videos by themselves don't work very well. When I tie it to industry, looking on the automotive side as an example with one of the manufacturers out there, they have to enable technicians to repair vehicles. And they created an online university that had great videos in it. They were very accurate, very well done, but the technicians weren't using them. Why? Because they weren't easy to reference when they were actually performing those tasks. So for example, you go through a video, at certain points it references other materials. You have to stop it. You have to go look things up, come back to it and try to get going again. What you really need is kind of a library that brings everything together in one format where you can play it with whatever you have in front of you. So it could be a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, a phone. and make it easy for folks to get to. So you're really converting from just purely video to into multimedia approach. And with that, you should be able to read it, hear it and see it, and then do it. So it'd be kind of in bite-sized chunks. And when you think about requirements today, 508 compliance, the ADA, that gives you that ability. If you can't hear it, you can certainly read it and see it. If you can't see it, you can hear it. So you can see how you can work with this type of approach for a number of applications. It's segmented. So you can go through in a linear fashion the way you would play a video, but at the same time, you can re-review a certain area that you didn't understand instantly. You don't have to see the whole thing over again. And when we talk about the interactive nature of this, it also enables the quickest folks to go through it very rapidly, so they don't frustrate themselves as far as it's taking too long. At the same time, this type of approach doesn't leave first-time users behind, or somebody that wants to put some extra emphasis in a certain area. They can spend as long as they need in that area. When we talk about bringing virtual and augmented reality in, again, this is designed to just make it easier for folks. So on the left-hand side of the slide there, you can kind of see different ways that you could play these. And today, specifically, if you have a tablet or an iPad, it can actually recognize what you're looking at and ask you some questions as far as what you might want to learn, what you might want to do with it. And so that really pulls learners into in as far as understanding the environment they're in and making it easy, so they're not frustrated in trying to get to the knowledge they really need to be able to tap into. Let's go to the next slide, please. And here, what are we bringing in? I kind of mentioned it a minute ago as far as a library. It's learning and training, but it also brings the reference materials in. If you have procedures that are written instructions, it makes those instantly part of this environment that we're talking about. Safety and environmental concerns, it blends in any of those concerns for specific processes. When we talk about knowledge capture, this is really experiential knowledge. So you talk about a subject matter expert can say, okay, here's the procedures, but here's some things you may really want to pay attention to when you're going through this. So when we think about in industry, wouldn't it be great if everybody out there could perform at the same level of the best person that you have in your organization? And this is what enables that. So it's kind of a communication tool for those subject matter experts, where they can bring all these elements together, make it easy for folks to understand when they're training, when they're learning with it, but also easy to reference when they're actually out there on the job. Let's go to the next slide, please. Here we're giving you some examples of what we refer to as large format and mobile format interfaces. So these tools are, they're digital learning, so they're delivered in HTML5. So that makes them hardware agnostic. In other words, if you're sitting in your office or in a classroom environment, you can play them on desktops, laptops, you can project them. But also out there with a tablet or a phone, you may want to use a mobile interface because it makes it easier to see in full screen. So when you're looking at the lower left there, that would be more of a large screen format where you can read it, you can hear it and see it in the video window there. And at any point you can go full screen with that video window. When you look at the mobile format, you could also play this mobile format on a desktop or laptop, but with a phone or with a tablet, you're just tabbing with it. So you can go to the next screen, the next screen, the next screen. You can go up to contents in the upper right and navigate to wherever you want to be in this particular lesson. And you see a T for text up there. You can hit that and see the same text that you'd be looking at the image on the lower left there. And so it's just tabbing around and working with it. So you can be in one format and instantly go back to the other format, or vice versa. So this is just kind of giving you a feel for what these look like. The example you see there's FlightStar. They're a large maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility down in Jacksonville, Florida. The example that you're seeing there is Quadrax connectors, because they were having a challenge with that as far as folks understanding exactly how to do the procedure, and this made it easy for everybody to understand it. Let's go to the next slide. When we talk about embedding these solutions, they're designed to be married to your documents. So if you have procedures that are in a PDF manual or in an interactive electronic technical manual, this would be embedded in that manual. So when you're on the job, you can easily go to it. Flip side is that the information that's in those manuals is embedded in this training. So if you're using it in a classroom environment, if you're learning online, you have the reference material in those manuals instantly available to you. When we talk about being web-based, that's primarily the way you're going to see it used out in industry. Why? Because you always want to be looking at the most current examples. And we referenced Toyota there as an example. They had a new process, and so we're talking on the manufacturing side, but they needed to have it applied across North America. They brought subject matter experts together in a Kaizen event. We were part of that event. The next day after that event, we captured those procedures the way that everybody, the experts agreed they wanted them performed, and then very quickly turned everything around. And by that, we mean everything was edited within a day and programmed within minutes and available the following day for training. They had it in each of their facilities across the country so that basically technicians could learn this new process that nobody had been exposed to. So when we talk about workforce development, it's critical that we have this kind of information very rapidly available. Brent Stubbs was in presentations before we began talking today. He was at Savannah Tech. We recently worked with him for a local manufacturer in Savannah, and they're basically going to be multiplying the size of their business, bringing a lot of new folks in. And how do we bring everybody up to speed on the entire process that we go through as far as manufacturing this facility? And that's what we give folks the ability to understand in a matter of minutes what they're going through in that process. So again, just an overview of technology that's out there right now. It's being applied across a variety of industries. So many of you are probably going to come across this in the future. It's the nice part about it is it makes it easy to learn. So you can pick it up in a virtual basis as far as your own instruction, but then you also have it when you're performing those tasks, when you're on the job, and that's really where the big impact is.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you sharing that with us this afternoon. And folks, remember what we said earlier about the questions. Any questions that you have, if you please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we're gathering them up, and we'll ask them at the end when everybody's finished presenting. All right, first of all, Mike, we've got a question for you here. Why is the focus on training aimed for fastest users?
Well, we want to gear it towards the fastest user, so it's kind of the opposite of the way we typically train in a classroom environment. There, we don't want to leave anybody behind, but with this type of format, you can gear it towards the quickest person so they can go through it very rapidly, get what they need, and then move on. So nobody gets frustrated that way. It's like, why is it taking so long to go through this? At the same time, as mentioned, we're not leaving folks behind. It's self-paced as far as the way you go through it. But we want everybody to be into it, not bugged by it as far as going through the training this way.
Okay. All right, next question. What ensures the accuracy of training content, and how is it kept updated?
Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, it's when we talk about virtual OJT, this is a communication tool for subject matter experts. So when they're basically feel like they have a process or procedure ready, then they can produce it this way. But also, when that process or procedure is updated, that subject matter expert is the same person that's responsible for this training content. So it doesn't have to go someplace else. They know that they're changing the procedures. They can instantly update these tools. And by instantly, most of the time when this training material is updated, it's updated the same day. So it can keep pace with those processes.
Now, you mentioned that it can be done in the same day. How can training like this be developed in 24 hours?
Well, when you talk about developing it in that period of time, uh, the subject matter expert does need to have their process outlined. But when they go through this, rather than developing PowerPoint, which sometimes can take a lot of time to develop, they can go out and capture those actual procedures. So they can basically, instead of having very descriptive paragraphs describing a certain step in a process, they can just say, do this, and they can show it. And so the folks on the other side, you learners out there, you can actually see what they're describing there. So very quickly, if there's 10 steps or 20 steps to a process that they want to teach, they can go through that and show kind of an over the shoulder type of approach there, or with animation. They can basically describe what's being seen in those steps and do it very quickly.
Excellent. Speed and accuracy, two very important aspects. All right. Next question. Beg your pardon. How can the same training be enabled in both classroom and user environments?
Well, you kind of saw before when we were showing you those formats, and I mentioned to you from a 508 compliancy standpoint, you can read it and see it if you can't hear it. So in a classroom, we'd recommend for an instructor to actually turn off the audio and use the visuals to talk to. So they're giving it at their own pace, their own way. And where we do have this applied as far as training out there right now for this format, they're doing that. And they'll say to the students, don't worry about taking any notes right now. Pay attention to what I'm showing you. Let's go through this. And when you're finished, you're going to have this tool and all your notes are taken for you. So it makes it beautiful that way, because they can cover a lot of ground in the time they have with the students. At the same time, those notes are already taken. And so use it in the classroom that way, but have everything there available afterwards as far as to go back and refer to.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great approach. You know, as you mentioned earlier about seeing and hearing and doing and so forth. You know, I learned as a school teacher that the more senses that you are able to involve in the learning process, the deeper the learning outcomes can be. You know. So,
absolutely.
Very good. All right. Michael Lee, thank you so much for your presentation this afternoon, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you sharing your expertise.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. For our fourth and final panelist this afternoon, I present you with Thomas Dawkins. Take it away, Thomas.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks to everybody that has been a part of making this event a great event. Thank you all for that. Also, thank you, Betty, and the CETI organization with all the work that you've done to make this happen. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges we see when it comes to workforce development, and we're really in a very interesting place in our lives today, and experience something that really very few of us have ever experienced in our lives. With COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in, we're all familiar with these maps. Right now, I think we're over 2 million in regards to active cases or just total cases, but the fatalities is now up to close to 115. That being said, with the government and state governments, closing down businesses, doing the quarantine that's happened, we have a number of people that are, now have lost their jobs, have lost their businesses. And, in the past, 11 weeks, we've had over 40 million unemployed workers that are out there today. And, even in the state of Washington, we still have people that have applied for unemployment, but sadly enough, they haven't received it yet. And, we're not going to see the lines that we see here in some of the pictures that I provided as part of our presentation because of social distancing. And so it's going to be harder and harder for people to think about, how do they get their next job? And I will tell you, I over the past 2 weeks, I've got some great relationships. One with the DoD, as probably Michael does too, and also with the DOL and also the DOE. talking about what's happening in this space. The DOL basically said, we want to see close to 2,000 new apprenticeship programs over the next year. And the National Governors Association, and I've got a contact of mine that's there also, basically says over the next 5 years, we need to have at least 1,000 state worker transition programs that really help people move from careers like the hospitality or the cosmetics businesses into some of the more high-paying businesses. And I know that with Danielle and some of the work she's doing, I think that creating workforce programs focused on the medical industry, I think is spot on. Same thing with technology. Autonomous vehicles, really, really huge right now. Same thing for HVAC and other types of industry types of areas that are critical and important to our livelihood. As we look at these learning connections and we have to determine, should this be an apprenticeship program? Should it be an internship program? Should it be maybe just an all-out just type of workforce program where we're really focusing on more of an industry type of solving an industry problem rather than just a local community problem? So there's different ways in which we have to be thinking about how we go and drive to solution. And I think that a lot of people are really confused about what that looks like. For those of you that are in academia, your connections with industry is going to be critical and very, very important, especially as you think about the competency models that are required and necessary for you to be successful in workforce programs. And then as we also think about some of the work that Danielle and her team has been doing, continued emphasis on certification, credentials, and licenses. You can't emphasize that more because one of the things that, referencing her presentation, which Danielle, great job again, was we're looking at certifications, being about 36% of ways in which people get employed. Well, in my discussion with the DOL last week, they basically said, no, you know what, we expect for that to go to at least 45% over the next 3 years, because it's going to be really hard for us to be able to get people through maybe even some of the academic programs to get into some of these entry-level jobs. You see that with security, IT security, IT systems, cloud administration, those areas where certifications may be a better route for some students rather than going through the academic way. And we see some of those challenges, especially in the military space. You have a number of military service members that are going and getting their degrees, but no certifications. When they come out, they may have a degree, but are they qualified to go do the job? And one of the things you see with certifications, credentials, and licenses is that they do leverage a competency model, and that competency model is really to help them with job preparedness. Go ahead, and then we have one more slide. Is that right? No. Oh, yeah. So I'll leave it to. So, if that being said, hopefully this gives you kind of an understanding of some of the things that are going on, some of the areas that you need to focus on, and if you're looking at workforce programs, you got to be thinking about what are those types of programs, and how should they be structured, and what are you thinking about in regards to the outcomes?
Very good. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, sir. You mentioned workforce programs. That leads us to the first question. I apologize for that. My wrist bumped the button and put it forward about a few seconds too early. So, what do you see as the 3 keys to a successful workforce program?
Well, first and foremost is defining SMART goals. They need to be simple, measurable, attainable, relevant, and also time-based. We know that, and I've seen this with a couple of other programs I've worked on, conflicting goals equals disaster. good example is having an academic institution working with a company. The company is really trying to drive a workforce where the academic institution, which was a junior college, was really looking at gaining more students. And after they went through the workforce program, even though they were registered through that college, they dropped. Now, that being said, that caused that college a problem because it impacted their tuition count, and it caused them issues in being able to get the appropriate funding for that next year. The other area is really, really important. One is, if you think about workforce programs should also include not just the training and education, but also jobs. If you don't have a partner ecosystem or a partner council helping you with your workforce program, there will probably be no jobs at the back end. I've seen this time and time again where you have workforce programs in the evolution stage. They should have brought in industry or local businesses in at the very beginning, because that partner network is going to be a part of your program planning and building out that competency model. I think pointing out to Lee and some of that Michael that he had talked about is, and when we talk about a competency model, I'm not just talking about the technical aspect of the competency model. We also have to be thinking about the soft skills, because what we see today is many of these companies that are looking to employ people in their workforce, from workforce programs, are not just looking for their technical skills, but also what are the soft skills? Are they a fit for my company? Are they, can they fit into my business? And then the last one, which I also think that's quite interesting, is making sure that you do have that partner ecosystem helping you out with the competency model, to making sure your program is providing the output that the company or the industry wants.
Okay, very good, Thomas. Thank you. Now, with the 3 successful or keys to a successful workforce program in mind, not all of them, not all workforce programs follow those keys, and I don't know, sometimes they don't last as long as you might want. So that said, what do you believe is the main reason that workforce programs have a short lifespan?
Yeah, one is poor performance, poor output. Again, let's go back to those 3 key reasons. If you don't have clear goals, you're not going to be able to have the right output that probably your consumers, being industry or companies, would want to see out of your workforce that you're training. I also think that I've seen some areas where the funding spend rate, financial management of these workforce programs has been really a big challenge. They're only looking at it for the 2 to 3 years. They're thinking that they're going to get funding again at the end of those 2 to 3 years based upon a grant. A lot of times that doesn't happen. And so you have to really think about what is that long-term strategy for your workforce program. Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, next question. Why is a competency-based education model critical for a workforce program?
Yeah, and I'll point back to Danielle and the great work that her company does. If you're looking at creating a certification or license or whatever, you need to make sure that you're providing the job skills, you're providing training for those job skills so that the person can be successful in the job. That is a competency-based model that's critical and very important to any workforce program. And as, again, back to Mike, when you think about that competency model, it shouldn't just be the technical side, it's also the soft skills side.
Okay, very good. Thomas, thank you so much for answering these questions. And now, folks, we have a few questions that have come in through our the chat box that I'd like to share with our panelists. And we still have a few minutes left, so let's see if we can get to most, if not all of these. The first question is, essentially for all of you, whoever wants to answer first, would like to chime in, is to the group. As an educator, how can I advertise with little to no budget and reach my students for online learning opportunities?
So I don't mind taking that one, Joe.
Sure, Mike.
Since I spent 26 years in 3 different universities, and quite often would start at that university and there was 0 advertising budget, just as this person is asking. And so you have to figure out innovative ways to be able to reach your constituents. I would say that, you look for every free resource that you possibly can. You'd be amazed at what you could potentially basically barter with somebody. So for example, is if there are particular sectors within your area that can help reach students, you could offer a free class or several to employees of that organization in order to get some advertising out to their entire employee base. So that's one particular approach that you can do. The other is in bulletins for faith organizations. I advertised in many organizations for their various bulletins that are out there, electronic or paper. And then also from a social media aspect is really use your tools, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it might be, as well as start a blog. Get yourself and a presence known. It takes time. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It will take time, and that's the biggest resource of it for you is time. But there are a lot of free entities that you would be able to do some of these things with.
Joe, if I can add to that.
For Thomas.
Yeah, thanks. I think the first thing you need to do as you think about marketing your programs is truly understand who your audience is. It's great to be able to pull together a marketing plan to go and promote your program, but I think that you can, broad doesn't really get you where you really want to be with the number of tenants that you want for your program. A good example is, and I think that this was something that somebody put up on the chat, was local organizations, local community.
Yeah.
Everybody, is familiar with, in their community, there's usually a big tree that's there, a big oak tree. And I kind of look at that when I think about communities, I look for those oak trees, like the football coach, or somebody that is a part of one of the larger congregations in that area, or maybe some high school counselors or things like that. You got to think about how do you engage with them, because word of mouth is probably one of the best marketing tools that you could ever have. And being able to go build those relationships and drive that type of engagement and equip them with what are some of the 2 things that are so important about your program and what's the outcomes going to be, that's where you're really going to get the bang for the buck.
Okay.
I'd like to actually add a little bit to that, to both what they were saying. Don't ever underestimate the power of volunteering within your community. It is key. It's a great way to get started. And that's where, to reinforce what Tom was saying about the word of mouth, people underestimate. Start locally, and don't underestimate the power of partner with other vendors. So I think a lot of success has come through AMCA, like strong partnerships with CETI, with ProTrain, whereas we do not exchange money, but we promote each other, solid, good products. So find other vendors that your product would complement, and share, write it back to social media, and it's all free.
Absolutely, Danielle. I'm glad you said that. You mentioned partnerships. There was a question that was directed to you, Danielle. What are your recommendations for medical programs that need to have internships or externships? And the question person says it's very hard to provide hands-on practice. Can you comment on that?
I can, and the question is a little twofold. So if the person wants to contact me directly to get in more in depth, I'm more than happy they can reach out to me. I want to say that most schools need to go back to their state requirements. There are a lot of times misconceptions that they think that the internship and the externship are required. If the state guidelines are not requiring a hands-on portion, it might be a school that's adding that portion on. So look to see who's enforcing the hands-on. Having a practical portion absolutely makes the candidate more attractive, but you do not need like 25 live draws to sit for our phlebotomy test. People kind of assume it. So first I would steer that person back to their state guidelines. There's only 3 states in the entire country that have guidelines for phlebotomy. There's 47 states that don't have any. So they could be thinking they have to have an internship. And you know, it is difficult. Right now everything is shut down, so they can't get any. So I would steer them to check their guidelines before they think it has to be implemented.
Right.
So it's probably not a good answer for them, but that's my recommendation.
Sure. Very good. Thanks, Danielle. All right. Question to all panelists. Says hybrid education has just been used at universities for years, and this person has actually taught them. She says, currently I have vocational and was in the classroom, and now distance learning online and video check in material. And I apologize, I thought that was a question. No, it's a comment. Anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, I will. I think with some of the work I did with Job Corps, we're seeing even vocational types of training be more hybrid in focus, especially if we're looking at electricians or plumbers or those types of things. There's ways in which we can provide a hybrid modality where the students can, may only come into class maybe 1 or 2 times a week, but be able to take that training, as Lee had talked about, that helps them understand exactly what those, what those job requirements are and the job skills that are necessary, and the process that it takes to go and maybe fix a generator or take care of a windmill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Question for Mike Lee. With COVID-19 having such a huge impact on so many small businesses, which areas do you see surviving and needing the most upskill training as we get back to what's termed as a new normal?
I would say that, what we're experiencing right now is that there's a number of smaller businesses, and this goes into the industry side out there, that have very peculiar or individual type requirements. And so there needs to be approaches that can actually take that into mind. So they'll be looking for folks that have more broad-based education, but when it comes to their particular areas there, they need to be able to bring folks up to speed very quickly. And so they have to have ways to go after that. And it has to also be a very a cost-effective solution. So from that standpoint, smaller locations can't afford big ticket training programs. So how do they best address that? And that's why we find it's kind of interesting, because if they've got a subject matter expert, then we've got ways to help address that. But it does depend on their expertise to do that. And so that's where we see some of this going in the future. From the standpoint of training virtually, they want to be able to interview folks that come in and already understand what they're doing, and this gives them ability in that interview process to see if folks are going to have the basic skills backgrounds that they have, but also that understanding for their specific business.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Michael. All right, here's a rapid fire question, a challenge to all 4 panelists. Okay, in 30 seconds or less, give me an example of a SMART goal. Give you a few seconds to think, okay? An example of a SMART goal. Remember that the acronym SMART. So each of you think about that, all right? In 30 seconds or less, what is an example of a SMART goal? We'll start with Danielle.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. Well,
Smart goal.
alphabetically, your name starts with a D, and then we got Mike, and then we got Tanya. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Ladies
okay.
first. Yeah.
Any SMART goal, first, I think and you hear it over and over, one, it has to be obtainable. You know, you cannot lose 10 pounds in 2 days. So set realistic goals and write them down. My key thing is if I write it down and I track it, track my progress, I can achieve the goal. So a SMART goal needs to have a time period. You know, I'm going to achieve it in this period. Maybe have a larger goal and smaller goals within, so you can do steps. And like I said, to me, writing it down and committing to it, actually, and reviewing it on a daily basis. That would be my quick.
All right. So how do you eat an elephant? One little piece at a time, right?
One bite at a time.
Very good. All right. Mike Schroeder, how about you? 30 seconds or less. An example of a SMART goal. 30 seconds, go.
Danielle took mine, so I'll pass. No, no, I would say the biggest piece, an example to me that I've had many, is failure. Be willing to accept failure and pick yourself back up. And so as you're going through it, is don't go into it thinking that you're going to have the perfect answer or that you're going to lose 10 pounds. You might lose 8 pounds. But be prepared for failure and be able to pick yourself back up.
All right. That's not bad. I'll write that one down. Well, this is recorded, so everybody will have it written down. All right. Well done, Mike. Appreciate it, sir. Thomas, how about you? 30 seconds. Definition of, not definition, an example of a SMART goal. 30 seconds, go.
Sure. So as I think about this from a workforce program perspective, it would be employment rate within 60 days of graduation. That's a good example of a SMART goal.
There you go. You hit all 5 points, and it's. I think that's achievable.
Could be.
Could be. All right. All right. Last but not least, 30 seconds. An example of a SMART goal. Michael Lee, go, sir.
Well, first of all, I think everybody's kind of covered the great points there. I would add to that relevancy as far as where do you want to be once you achieve that goal? What difference is it going to make to you? And if it's really relevant, then it's going to give you that drive that you need to achieve it.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I had a goal that I didn't think was relative, why would I even want to put forth all the effort needed to achieve it? If there wasn't some kind of reward waiting for me at the end, or something that would really be relevant to what I'm trying to achieve. Excellent. All right. Let's see. Here's a comment for all panelists. This person says that they're in California. They require internship hours for the state exam. Let's see. That's not really a question, but it's a comment.
And she's correct. California, Louisiana, and Georgia are the 3 states that have some regulations. California has some of the toughest. I was going to tell her feel free to call me about some ideas with externships.
Absolutely. Okay, another comment, smaller programs, there's a change of local need and stable workforce, education levels of applicants are things to consider, funding and housing for participants, high cost of living, the need higher wage type career required. In Silicon Valley, this is critical to student success. She talks about networking, local outreach organizations, high schools, and library table setup. And someone else commented, Nevada, it's internship is required for opticians. And if y'all want to comment on those. Okay, what was stated, remember, if you have any other questions, these panelists are very happy to help you as needed. Any other questions that you might have that we have not answered at this time, you'll have the contact information that you could direct or post it on the LinkedIn group. All right. Again, we want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. And I will show you the last slide just as a reminder. Please be sure to visit the website of these sponsors. Were it not for these sponsors, of course, this conference, providing it to you free of charge, would not have been possible. On behalf of CETI 2020 and our sponsors, we want to thank Thomas Dawkins, Danielle Sadigi, Mike Schroeder, and Michael Lee. Thank you all so very much for a phenomenal panel discussion this afternoon, for presenting us with your expertise. And folks, we hope that this has been beneficial to you as we talked about this business and industry workforce panel. Perhaps you've gained some knowledge that could be useful in your organization or in your search for a job or in your pivoting, as it were, during this global pandemic that we're having. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And please, please be sure to follow us on social media, especially that LinkedIn group, the hashtag on Twitter, CETI 2020. Thank you again. Everyone have a nice afternoon.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you all. This is Betty from ProTrain. Just as we're ending in the last 15 seconds, we are having our very last and final CETI session of today in exactly 30 minutes. The title is At Risk Youth Panel. If you've not registered, you still can. That's the beauty of having a virtual conference. You can register up to the minute before. You guys have been wonderful. You've rocked and rolled, and thank you. And Joe, you did great. And our panelists, you did fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Betty.
Thank you, Betty.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.